So I thought I would offer a response to the Democratic debate. I'm not really interested in a lot of the stuff they said. All the usual diatribes about all the Democratic Party platform stuff. Not really interested in that. I was more interested in their gun control. Anytime they talked about gun control. So I started watching it.
From rolling back the progress that we've made, they would repeal the Affordable Care Act, not improve it. They would give more tax breaks to the super wealthy and corporations, not to the middle class. And they would, despite all their tough talk about terrorism, continue to let people who are on the no-fly list buy guns.
And Ted Kennedy, the senator, was not allowed to fly. He had to straighten it out. And that's how stupid it is. There was just a report of an 18-month-old child that's on the no-fly list. Wasn't allowed to fly. An 18-month-old child. Yeah, think about it. That's how great this list is. We want to use this list to deny Americans and people and citizens rights. It's not right. But please continue, Ms. Clinton.
So we have a lot of work to do in this campaign to make it clear where we stand in the Democratic Party, what we will do for our country, and I look forward to this evening's discussion of real issues that face the American people. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Clinton. Governor O'Malley.
Martha, thank you.
Secretary Clinton.
Tonight we have a different debate than the debates that we have been allowed to have so far. Because tonight is different because of this reason. That in the course of this presidential campaign, America has again been attacked by jihadi terrorists, American lives taken from us. So yes, we must talk about our ideas to move our economy forward, but the first job of the President of the United States is to protect the people of the United States. I visited with a number of our neighbors in Northern Virginia.
Northern Virginia. At a mosque,
last Friday. And as I looked out there at the eyes of our neighbors, I also looked in the eyes of veterans. I looked into the eyes of Boy Scouts. I looked in the eyes of moms and dads who would do anything in their power to protect our country's values and our freedoms. What our nation needs right now is to realize that while we face a terror danger, we also face a different sort of political danger. And that is the danger that democracies find themselves susceptible to when unscrupulous leaders try to turn us upon each other. What our country needs right now is new leadership that will bring us together around the values that unite us, around the freedoms that we share as Americans. We will rise to the challenge of ISIL, and we will rise together to the challenges that we face in our economy, but we will only do so if we hold true to the values and the freedoms that unite us.
Oh, the values and freedoms that unite us. Like the value and freedom of due process and the value and freedom of an armed citizenry, which keeps the government in check.
Which means we must never surrender them to terrorists, must never surrender our American values to racists,
including terrorists that we elect into office.
To the fascist pleas of billionaires with big mouths. We are a better country than this. Our enduring symbol is...
So who exactly paid for all these gun control campaigns? Who just pushed $1.5 million into one state Senate campaign in Northern Virginia? If we shouldn't surrender our rights to fascists, oligarchs, billionaires, I think he put all those labels out there, then we shouldn't surrender our rights to any fucking group headed by fucking Michael fucking Bloomberg. Fuck that prick. And fuck Martin O'Malley. He's a cunt. And we'll get into Martin O'Malley later, and we'll talk about his gun control here in the great fucking shithole state of Maryland. And Bernie didn't say anything about guns in his opening speech, so I'm going to skip over it.
Secretary Clinton, in the wake of the
so we're going to move on to a question to Secretary Clinton.
You all emphasized gun control, but our latest poll shows that more Americans believe arming people, not stricter gun laws, is the best defense against terrorism. Are they wrong?
Well, I think you have to look at
no, they're not.
They're
not wrong.
Terrorism challenge that we face abroad and certainly at home.
And to Hillary's credit, I agree with most of what she says here. She sort of gets around the issue of talking about guns, which she knows isn't popular for Clinton, and she actually gets to addressing terrorism in general as a strategy and not tactics.
We also have to build a coalition at home. abroad, we need a coalition that is going to take on ISIS. I know how hard
and
that is.
Watch, Martha Raddatz is going to scold her for not answering the question, even though she's answering the question correctly.
Yeah, but I'm getting to that because I think if you only think about the coalition abroad, you're missing the main point, which is we need a coalition here at home. Guns in and of themselves, in my opinion, will not make Americans safer.
Guns will not make Americans safer. Ooh, what's this tasty little picture right here? Oh, yes. Please, Miss Clinton, if guns do not make people safer, please remove yourself from that dangerous zone of Secret Service agents with Sig Sauer pistols that hold 15 to 19 rounds. P90, by the way, they carry P90 submachine guns as well. They actually carry full auto submachine guns. It's in their arsenal. Actually, when she was traveling with the president, they probably traveled with a menagerie of fully automatic and semi-automatic rifles to protect the president. So, Ms. Clinton, if guns don't make people safer, please, by all means, remove your Secret Service detail. At least disarm them, and they can protect you with baseball bats or whatever seems to be available at the time that you get, something would happen.
We lose 33,000 people a year already to gun violence.
No, we don't lose 33,000 people a year to gun violence. We lose 33,000 people a year to guns. 60% of those on average for any given year. 19,000 or more are suicides, and suicide is a human right. So I'm not really concerned about people who decide, adults who decide they want to end their life. That is their choice. The fact that they do it with a gun is of no consequence to me, and really there's not much you can do to stop that. And she's actually kind of right there. A correct response to terrorism is to go after terrorists.
Closer relations and, yes, coalitions within our own country. The first line of defense against radicalization is in the Muslim American community, people who we should be welcoming and working with. I worry greatly that the rhetoric coming from the Republicans, particularly Donald Trump, is sending a message to Muslims here in the United States and literally around the world that there is a clash of civilizations, that there is some kind of Western
There is a clash of civilizations, but that's for another video.
Islam, which then, I believe, fans the flames of radicalization. So guns have to be looked at as its own problem, but we also have to figure out how we're going to deal with the radicalization here in the United States.
Yes, I agree with her. Guns are a separate problem, violence is a separate problem, and gun violence is its own little problem.
In record numbers after the Paris attacks, would you discourage people from buying guns?
It's a country in which people choose to buy guns. I think more than half of the people in my own state of Vermont, and I guess here in New Hampshire, are gun owners. That's the right of people. But this is what I do believe. I believe that when we have some 300 million guns in this country,
and counting,
I believe that when we have seen these horrific mass killings.
Mass killings are horrific, but they're anomalies.
But in Colorado and movie theaters in Colorado, I think we have got to bring together the vast majority of the people who do, in fact, believe in sensible gun safety regulations.
Oh, fuck, there it is, sensible.
Talking about polls. Poll recently came out. Overwhelming majority of the American people say we should strengthen the instant background check. Who denies that it is crazy?
I've had a background check for every gun I've purchased.
Who denies that it
and how are you going to strengthen it?
To allow people to own
what else do you want to add to it?
Or are mentally unstable?
I don't think criminals or mentally unstable should, but they still get them. Gun show loophole is insignificant.
That weapons designed by the military to kill people are not in the hands of civilians.
Weapons designed by the military to kill people. Well, here we go. That is a code word for assault weapons, which is a code word for assault rifles, which is a euphemism for modern sporting rifles, which are nothing more than small caliber to medium caliber rifles people use for anything from just owning for shits and giggles, or people actually hunt with semi-automatic rifles. Actually, you can go down to Texas and hunt wild hogs, and you would probably want a semi-auto AR-10, a 308 to hunt hogs with. And when he says we shouldn't let people have guns that are designed by the military to kill people, well, first of all, let's make this concession right here. Yes, guns can kill people, and they are designed by the military to kill people. That's all guns. Everything from the musket to the M1911 to the .38 revolver to my CZ-P07 9mm semi-automatic pistol, the bow and arrow, the slingshot, the trebuchet. So if you have anything that can sling a projectile, he's basically saying civilians shouldn't be allowed to own it. That's by default what he's saying. I know that's not what he's meaning, but words have meaning. And that's what he says when he says we should ban civilians from owning weapons created by the military to kill people. It makes no sense. It's a nonsense statement. So he's effectively calling for a ban on all weapons, all guns. And then we'd have to go to knives, because there are knives that were designed by the military, like the Sykes-Fairburn knife, designed by the military to actually go in and out of a person fairly easily. So we'd have to start banning those. And you know what? Bowie knives, those were used by the military as well. Anything with a sharp edge, and then we'd have to get down to blunt instruments. So how far is this going to go, Senator Sanders?
I think there is a consensus. I think I'm not going to say
there isn't a consensus
that everybody is in agreement. It's a divided country on guns, but
yeah,
there is
and gun owners aren't conceding anymore
on sensible gun safety regulations. That coming from a state that has virtually no gun control
and very little crime,
to bring together.
Martha,
thank you, Senator Sanders. I think we're going to go on.
We want to touch on something
that's issues that really separates us on this stage, David. Excuse me, no.
Governor, we have to abide by the rules here. We'll call on you here shortly, but I do want to pick up on something.
Actually passed comprehensive gun safety legislation with a ban on combat assault weapons, David. And look, there are profound differences in this race on this issue. Senator Sanders voted against the Brady bill. Senator Sanders voted to give immunity to gun dealers. And Senator Sanders voted against
the immunity for gun dealers thing is actually good legislation.
Issue. Secretary Clinton changes her position on this every election year, it seems, having one position
and she
in
does.
2000 and then campaigning against President Obama and saying we don't need federal standards. Look, what we need on this issue is not more polls. We need more principle. When ISIL does training videos that say the easiest way to get a combat assault weapon in the United States of America is at a gun show, then we should all be waking up. We need comprehensive gun safety legislation and a ban on combat assault weapons.
When ISIL makes videos, I really don't give a fuck what they say.
You talk about assault weapons. Even if
we shouldn't surrender our rights because ISIL makes a video saying we should.
Weapons tomorrow, Americans already own an estimated 7 to 10 million semi-automatic rifles. Would you make it illegal to own those weapons?
Yes, we do.
Force people to turn them in? And if not, how would banning the sales really make a difference?
Because, Martha, it would prevent people like the guy that just got charged yesterday, perhaps, from being able to buy combat assault weapons. We are the only nation.
No, it wouldn't, because you still have a market. It would not prevent him at all.
Have them confiscated, the ones that are already here?
No, Martha, I would not. And that's not what we did in Maryland. But you know what we did in Maryland? We overcame the NRA's objections. We overcame all of the crowds that were coming down there.
We overcame all the crowds that were coming down there. Let's pause that for a minute and think about it. We overcame all the crowds that were coming down there. We had members of our state. We had citizens of our state in the state of Maryland. I was here for a few of them. I didn't go to any of them. But they were actually protesting the Firearms Safety Act of 2013 here in Maryland in vastly larger and more superior numbers, and showing up in larger numbers than the gun control crowd. Everybody was against it, and we'll get into a little more about some of the more important people that were against this do-nothing. I won't say it's do-nothing legislation, because really what it is it's legislation to infringe on the right to bear arms. That's what the FSA 2013 was. It was to make it not safer, but really just to dig at the people who want to exercise their Second Amendment rights. And we'll get into that in a second.
We did our own rallies, and at least if we enact these laws in a prospective way, we can address a major vulnerability in our country. ISIL training videos are telling lone wolves the easiest way to buy a combat assault weapon.
A combat assault weapon. define combat assault weapon.
Because of the flip-flopping political approach of Washington that both of my two colleagues on this stage have represented there for the last 40 years. We need common sense.
Oh, there we go. Common sense again. Common sense gun safety legislation.
Let's tell the truth,
just
Martin.
like we passed in Maryland.
Let's maybe have some rules here, commentators.
We will.
All right.
And let me just establish that for you, Senator, really quickly. Governor, we are going to call on you tonight. It's very clear you have a lot to say, but please wait until you're called upon. And, Senator, he invoked your record,
sure did.
and I'll let you respond.
Invoked mine
and
as
you will
well.
get
We will get back to Senator Sanders in a second in his response. But let's discuss the FSA of 2013 here in the state of Maryland and what it actually did. Did you actually get an assault weapons ban here in Maryland? Here is a letter dated October 6, 2014, almost a year after the legislation was passed, the FSA 2013, in Maryland. And let me read to you some of what Jack McCallie, the former commander of the Maryland State Police Licensing Division. Now, that is the division in the state of Maryland that is responsible for issuing all the permits for you to own, receive, or purchase a firearm within the state of Maryland. They also do concealed handgun licenses, which are issued very, very rarely and only in very exigent circumstances. And that's part of the reason why Jack McCallie has now come out against the FSA 2013 legislation. That's one of the reasons, and one of the things he is fighting against as well is the good and substantial clause to the concealed handgun licensing requirements here in the state of Maryland. And he says, in 2013, I retired as the commander of the Maryland State Police Licensing Division, as I said. Before that, I ran the Maryland State Police Firearms Enforcement Section and Gang Enforcement Unit. I was also a homicide investigator, drug investigator. So this guy has a very extensive list. So in the next paragraph, he goes down, don't be fooled by Lieutenant Governor Anthony G. Brown. And Anthony Brown was running for office here in Maryland last year, 2014. I can't remember what he's running for. And Governor Martin O'Malley. When they tell you they have passed an assault weapons ban in Maryland, Governor Martin O'Malley and Lieutenant Governor Brown boast that they have made the public safe by, quote, banning the sale of 45 types of assault weapons, including the AR-15 and certain copycats, unquote. Let's take a look at the truth. The 2013 Firearm Safety Act was written in response to Sandy Hook Elementary School shooting. Well, there's your problem right there. You're writing knee-jerk reactionary legislation, first of all. So that's the first problem with this legislation. Knee-jerk reactionary legislation is very rarely does any good. The O'Malley administration was focused on banning the AR-15. Did they do that? The Firearms Safety Act does not ban the sale of the AR-15 with a heavy barrel. I own one. I bought one when I got here to Maryland. I have an AR-15 up in my room with a pistol, with a forward grip, with a sight, with all the bells and whistles on it. A 5.56 millimeter AR-15. The only difference between that and the AR-15 I could get in the state of Virginia is that it has a heavy barrel, which actually makes it more accurate, which is a plus to having a heavy barrel. But, so he continues to say, in fact, is not a regulated firearm in Maryland. The AR-10, now the AR-10 is the .308 version of the AR-15, fires a bigger bullet. The AR-10 is not banned in Maryland and can be purchased and carried out of the store on the same day. That's what I did. I showed up at the store, Engage Armament, right down the road from me in Maryland, Rockville, Maryland. I went there and I purchased my very first AR, my personally owned AR, when I got to Maryland. The difference between the AR-10 and the AR-15, as he explains, the AR-10 is a larger caliber. He continues to say, the truth is, Maryland does not really have an assault weapons ban as they claim. In fact, there are countless other sporting rifles that fit the description of the type of firearm they have sought to ban and are perfectly legal to purchase in Maryland. The office of the governor is lying to the public when they claim they have given them an assault weapons ban. The truth is that these types of firearms have proven to be the least lethal firearm in Maryland, as they are across the country, on average about 300 deaths from rifles. every year, annually, on average. About 300, 330 deaths from rifles. And that's what we're trying to ban. That's what they're trying to ban. They have been the least lethal in Maryland. He continues, they are rarely used in any crime. True. That's true across the country, not just in the state of Maryland. Because they're expensive. Assault rifles are very expensive. Not only is it a supply and demand issue, it's just a function issue as well. They're very expensive to make, maintain, and keep. They're also not very easy to conceal when you're going to commit a crime. So actually the most used gun in crimes is a .38 revolver. You can look that up as well. Okay, so where was I? In fact, there are countless other sporting rifles that fit the description of the type they have sought to ban. Assault weapons ban. They are rarely used in any crime. Would a true assault weapon ban prevent incidents like Sandy Hook? No. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold committed one of the most well-known school massacres in our history in 1999 at Columbine High School using a 9mm handgun and a double-barreled shotgun. Let's remember that in 1996 we passed an assault weapons ban. So in 1999, he goes on to say that. One of the most well-known school massacres in our history in 1999 at Columbine High School using a 9mm handgun and a double-barreled shotgun. There was a federal assault weapons ban in effect at the time, and it did not prevent the massacre from occurring. Evil will find its way. We are fooling ourselves to think making a few select firearms illegal will have any effect. And that's something they did here in Maryland. They made a roster of people who know absolutely nothing about firearms, made rosters of very specific types of firearms. They did the equivalent of making a Ford Focus illegal to drive in the state of Maryland. Or going through and saying, you can't have the Tesla P85 DS in the state of Maryland, but you can have the Tesla P85. Or you can't have the Cadillac CTS, but the CTV is perfectly legal. And no Ferraris at all. That's essentially the equivalent of what they did with this list. They just took a list of firearms that sound dangerous. They probably looked for pictures of them on the internet, so they look dangerous, and they banned them. By the way, missing the AR component. Because why? Because it's one of the most popular firearms sold. As a matter of fact, since this legislation, Maryland has lost jobs because of this. Beretta Firearms used to have a factory in Maryland, and because the FSA of 2013 didn't allow the construction of it specifically stated you were not allowed to produce what they call quote unquote high capacity magazines in the state of Maryland, which is anything over 10 rounds apparently. And that's a fucking arbitrary number that gun control advocates across the country pull out of their ass. Somehow 10 rounds is, if you have 11 bullets in your gun, all of a sudden it's a fucking death machine sent by Satan himself to kill everyone. Okay, so he goes on to say, evil will find its way where fooling yourselves thinking that we need a few select firearms illegal will have any effect. The same can be committed by a number of weapons. The same act can be committed by a number of weapons. The AR-15 has been made popular by the sensationalized reporting by the mainstream media. True. It's a great scapegoat. It looks scary. It's probably because it's black. Racist. There are plenty of other firearms that are far more dangerous. Now, in 2009, I was at a little place called Fort Hood, Texas. A man whose picture you saw, by the name of Nidal Hassan, came in with handguns. Killed 13 people, wounded 34. Handguns. FN-57 handguns. He did that with FN-57 handguns. And Jack McCalley continues, the O'Malley administration also claims they have passed a bill that limits the size of a magazine. Is this true? No. While you may not buy or transfer a magazine that contains more than 10 rounds in Maryland, you may continue to possess a 15-round magazine. You can also legally purchase a 15-round magazine in another state and bring it into Maryland. There are millions of 12, 13, 15-round magazines in Maryland. They were already here. That's the problem. They were already here. You aren't going to be able, you can't just sprinkle magic pixie dust and make the large capacity, or what are actually standard capacity magazines, go away. I have some. I drive into Virginia, I buy magazines, I come back perfectly legal. I have handguns that hold more rounds than some of the magazines for my AR. And they're not magazines that stick out of the gun. They don't look weird in any way. They fit flush with the gun. I have a handgun that holds 19 rounds, like cops have. These magazines are not disposable, he continues. They have a very long shelf life. Magazines with a capacity of more than 10 rounds will remain prevalent in our state forever. The law does not change that. The Firearms Safety Act of 2013 is a very poor attempt, a quick fix, and like I said, knee-jerk reactionary legislation is usually fucking stupid and usually doesn't fucking do anything, at reducing gun violence in Maryland. Because what these people say is, we have to do something. We just can't not do anything. So we have to do something. And that something winds up being something like the Firearms Safety Act of 2013 here in the state of Maryland. It's a very poor attempt, a quick fix at reducing gun violence in Maryland. See, the problem with Maryland is you have a violence problem. You have a crime problem. That is one of these symptoms is gun violence. And the violence is not being committed with the scary rifles like the one I own. Mr. McCauley continues, as a retired police officer, I worked to combat violent crime for 23 years across the state of Maryland. I have a very strong understanding of the causes of violence and tactics we can use to reduce violence. I have worked in specialized units to target gun violence and gang violence. We are not addressing the true causes of gun violence. Root cause mitigation is the key. The drug war is a cause of gun violence. Stop the drug war. That's one of the major causes of gun violence. The gang wars are a cause of gun violence. I have worked in specialized units to target gun violence and gang violence. So he knows. He's worked in both of those. And he's probably seen what works. What's more effective? Targeting the cell. Getting left of boom, as we call it. Getting left of the bang. Preventing people from becoming gang members before they go out and commit violent crimes. Giving people opportunity before they resort to a life of crime and commit violence. Root cause fucking mitigation. It works. Try it sometime. Preventing law-abiding citizens from owning firearms that they are never going to use to commit a crime does not prevent gun violence. It's low-hanging fruit and an easy target because we're law-abiding. So, of course, we'll follow the law. He continues, we are not addressing the true causes of gun violence. Maryland's efforts to reduce gun violence by passing a very poor piece of legislation are out of focus, period. Jack McCauley. And this is in the Baltimore Sun, October 6, 2014, a letter from the retired commander of the Maryland State Police Licensing Division and the former Maryland State Police Firearms Enforcement Section and Gang Enforcement Unit commander for the entire state of Maryland. He knows what causes violence. He knows where gun violence comes from. He knows all the symptoms, and he knows what they all look like, and he knows how to fight them, and he knows how to prevent them. And while we're on the subject of Maryland and the FSA of 2013 and how much safer it made Maryland, do you know how much Baltimore's murder rate went up this year? 2 years after the enactment of the FSA of 2013, the murder rate is up 53% just in the city of Baltimore. It's very hard to show a causation or even a correlation between gun laws and gun crime and gun violence. Violence is a symptom of another problem, and if you aren't combating that problem strategically, and you're resorting to tactics to fight a strategic problem without any strategy behind it, and your only fight is with one little tactic of limiting law-abiding people from preventing firearms, but you want to prevent gun violence from people who don't get their firearms legally anyways, it's not going to have any effect. And Jack McCauley, by the way, is now fighting the entire system, the system he used to work for, under a Democratic governor. He's the good and substantial reason for a concealed handgun license, he thinks is horse shit. Because no one ever gets them. You have to have, it actually says in the form, you have to demonstrate that you were in the past a victim of a crime. So in other words, I have to be a victim of a crime before the state will grant me the human right to protect my own life. The human right to self-preservation. It's horseshit. Martin O'Malley is a cunt. He's a fucking authoritarian douchebag. And I hope his presidential campaign just goes down in flames. I hope it just fucking falls apart. And it should, based on this one lie. Because this is the one thing that all the liberals are hopping on right now. Gun control, gun control, gun control. Because it's low-hanging fruit. It's a great way to score political points against an easy target in the NRA and gun owners. So that covers fucking Martin O'Malley. I guess we should get back to Senator Sanders. I think he's going to respond here.
All right. For a start, we can do all the great speeches we want, but you ain't going to succeed unless there is a consensus. Right? In 1988,
there will never be a consensus.
Just to set the record straight, Governor, I ran for the U.S. House. We have one House member from Vermont. 3 candidates in the race. One candidate said, you know what? I don't
There's
think
two
it's
sides,
a great
rights
idea
and anti-rights.
that we sell automatic weapons in this country that are used by the military to kill people very rapidly.
Automatic weapons were banned in 1986 for sale.
Candidates in the race, you vote for one of the others, but not Bernie Sanders.
So I don't know what he's talking about. Automatic weapons are already illegal.
Percentage points, quite likely for that reason. So please, do not explain to me, coming from a state where Democratic governors and Republican governors have supported virtually no gun control.
No gun control and very little crime.
Do not tell me that I have not shown courage in standing up to the gun people, in voting to ban assault weapons, voting for instant background checks.
Banning assault weapons will have no effect on gun violence, as we've shown. 300 murders a year. 300 deaths a year. Don't even know if they're murders. Some of them could be accidents. Look at that fucking smug face. What a fucking prick.
I do, and this is an important issue, and I know we'll get to a lot of other critical ones as well. I actually agree with Governor O'Malley about the need for common sense gun safety measures, and I applaud his record.
Common sense, there we go again. What's common sense? What's common sense when you're limiting a right? Brady Bill's fine. Being against assault weapons is stupid because it's a made-up word.
And sellers immunity. And I also know that, and I'm glad to see this, Senator Sanders has really moved in face of the facts about what we're confronting in our country.
Senator Sanders has moved in the wrong direction.
In the 2 previous debates that he wants to take on this immunity issue because we need to send
and as a liberal, I won't be voting for any of these assholes.
To the sellers, to the gun lobby. And I would hope, Senator Sanders, that you would join the Democrats who are trying to close the Charleston loophole, that you would sponsor or co-sponsor legislation to remove the absolute immunity. We need to move on this consensus that exists in the country. Good. It's no longer enough just to say the vast majority of Americans want common sense gun safety measures, including gun
common
owners.
Sense.
We need, and
rights are not up for debate.
The 3 of us will do this. Nobody on the Republican side will even admit
you don't vote on
there's
rights.
a problem. And in whatever way the 3 of us can,
rights aren't given or taken at the whim of a mob. That's why democracy is one of the worst. We're a representative republic, constitutionally limited representative republic. The Constitution puts limits on the power of the government to take rights away from people. So I think that about wraps it up for their gun control comments. At least any that I bothered to watch. I think by that point I had rage quit, and I didn't want to do it anymore. But to summarize, I mean, they keep going through the same things over and over again. An assault weapons ban, assault weapons is made up. Banning the things they call assault weapons or modern sporting rifles would have very little to no effect on violent crime, as it didn't from 1996 to 2000, or 1994 to 2004 when that ban was in place already. It expired after 10 years because the government could not present a case to keep it. They could not present a case that it was within the scope of public safety to keep the ban on modern sporting rifles, or assault weapons as they call them, the political term, to keep those in place. They couldn't do it. So now where are we at? So now we have 3 Democratic contenders, none of which I will be voting for. I probably won't vote because I'm certainly not voting for Republicans and the crop of candidates they have. But on gun rights and gun violence, they have it all wrong. And it was proven here in Maryland. Martin O'Malley's record, don't let him fool you, is shit on reducing gun violence. Baltimore, right now, you've seen the unrest in Baltimore as a result of his policing practices in the state of Maryland and the city of Baltimore when he was mayor. Remember, he was the mayor of Baltimore and then the governor of Maryland. So Baltimore this year with a 53% increase in murders over last year, after 2 years of a Firearms Safety Act that was supposed to make the state of Maryland safer. I'm just glad I'm not a resident of this state. I have to live here, but I'm not a resident. I'm a resident of the great state of Texas. And really, they're all wrong, and I won't be fucking voting for any fucking one of them and making concessions to rights in order to vote. I'm not doing it anymore. If you don't fit the strict... I don't even have strict criteria. Let people do what they want to do. We have certain rights that are established in the Constitution, and uphold those rights, or I'm not fucking voting for you. You can go fuck your mother.